What's up, True Crime World? You're here with Luminol on the Wall. I'm Bevy.
And I'm Becky. Today's case is about a man who commits multiple sexual assaults over a long period of time. Unfortunately, his victims don't come forward until one of them is dead. This is the case of Dane Williams. Listeners' discretion is advised.
Hey, Beck.
Hey, Bev.
Let's get started on this 17-page podcast.
Yes, let's get started on the 17-page podcast.
I feel like we've realized that if the podcast is about like 13 pages, that's our lovely sweet spot. So we might be taking a little break in between this all.
That's right. Bev gets
antsy
after like even 9 pages.
Yeah.
What page are we on? What page are we on?
I do get a little cranky, I have to say. I can't even help it.
Yeah.
It's just like sitting still for this long is like too much for me.
Yeah. The worst part is when I write these, I truly have no idea how many pages it's going to be. I know that it's not going to be 20
Yeah,
pages.
Just based on like
The
what
information
content is out there.
Yeah, I know that, but I can't accurately gauge 13 or 17 pages, so you get what you get when you get here, Bev.
And you don't get upset. That's what we say to the kids in my school. You get what you get and you don't get upset.
Oh my God, I'm going to remember that for page 14.
Oh, fuck. That's going to be lovely to hear from my sister.
I can already see the death glare coming at
you.
me. Yeah. Sorry, you get what you get.
You don't get upset.
And you don't get upset.
It does roll off the tongue rather easily.
That's right.
It's definitely harder in practice. But anyways, I am excited for the podcast tonight, I will say.
It's going to be very good.
Yeah. You said it was rather savage and brutal.
Oh, yeah. It's pretty crazy. I'm not going to lie. But let's get into it so I don't spill any details.
All right. Sounds good.
So on the weekend of January 25th and 26th, 2008, there was an action sport retailer convention being held in San Diego, California. Now, you know the brand Hurley, Bev?
Yes, I do.
They were invited to that convention. And the reason why is because at the time they were a big brand name within the surfing community. And although the convention is very business orientated, there is still lots of parties and socializing that happens. After the convention, many of the attendees would head down to San Diego's Gaslamp Quarters, which is described as a historic neighborhood in downtown San Diego, with modern spots for sipping, supping, and socializing.
Delicious.
Do you know what supping is?
Drinking during supper?
That is a pretty good guess. I actually don't know, but when I was reading that, all I could think of was like
Supping.
Correct
Like
us if we're wrong. Yeah,
like
sup,
sup,
ladies,
sup.
sup, bruh. Exactly.
Oh my gosh. So this is just your theory.
100%.
Oh, if anyone knows, let us know.
I've never heard
Are we
anyone
close,
use
either of
that
us?
before.
No, neither have I.
So I'm going to just stick with what I feel.
It's a San Diegoism
Sup.
that we are not privy to.
No, because we're from Calgary.
Calgary, Alberta, Canada.
Yep.
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 That's the vibe here.
All right. So after a hard day of work, a bunch of people from the Hurley team, including 2 men, Brandon Guillemette and Dane Williams, head down to the Gaslamp Quarters, and they end up at the House of Blues. They ended up meeting up with a bunch of their friends and coworkers. The group shared a couple of drinks at the House of Blues, but it started to get really crowded, and they ended up going to the Hard Rock Hotel instead. You see, the group had taken a couple different Ubers there, so everyone arrived at different times. And because of that, they all accidentally seemed to separate because there were 2 different bars in that hotel.
Oh, okay. Yep. Makes sense.
So some just went up, some went down, and
they were separate.
They were separate. I don't know what else to say.
Makes sense.
Yes. So Dane and Brandon had gone to the lower bar, and most of their friends ended up upstairs. No one was concerned because there was actually lots of people at the bar that they knew, and more friends than the previous place they were at. So they just assumed that Brandon and Dane had met up with colleagues and were having a good time. After a couple drinks, the group tried to contact Brandon and Dane, so like texting, just see where they are, but they didn't get a hold of them, so they decided to leave. Now, just in case, they decided to swing past Dane and Brandon's hotel to see if they were there, but they weren't, so they just went to their hotel and assumed they were still out partying. Now, the following morning, Brandon sends out a text to some of their friends asking if they had seen Dane. He wasn't at his hotel room and his phone was off. Most of them assumed he probably just crashed at someone's hotel room and his phone died, and therefore his alarm didn't go off. Brandon eventually gets access to Dane's hotel room and all his stuff is still there, and he just assumes that he'll show up to work in a couple hours. But he didn't. So at that point, everyone got really worried about him because everyone knew how much Dane loved his job at Hurley. At the time, Dane was 23 and interning for Hurley, and he was also going to school. He was passionate about surfing and would spend as much time on the water as he could. This is what really connected him to the Hurley brand. He also loves snowboarding and all things adventurous. His family describes him as a fearless young man, but deep down in his core was really loving and caring. And all he wanted to do was make people smile.
Well, he sounds like a fantastic human.
He does, doesn't he?
Yeah, sounds really great.
So Bev, when Dane started at Hurley, his friend Brandon began showing him the ropes, and they actually became really great friends. And Brandon knew how much this job meant to Dane. And there was absolutely no way that he would not show up without a really good reason or letting anyone know.
Right.
So when word got around that he didn't show up for work, some of his friends actually got in touch with his mom just to let her know what was going on. And almost immediately, his mom knew something was not right. And her hair was standing up on the back of her neck. She knew this was his first convention, and he was so excited for it. She had called and texted Dane with no response, and about 30 hours after he was last seen, they filed a missing person report with the police. Dane's friends and family covered San Diego area with flyers. They tried to talk to as many people as they could, see if anyone had seen him. They just wanted to get the word out that he was missing. They checked the docks and the waterfront to see if maybe he had gone surfing and something terrible had happened, but they didn't see anything. Now, investigators start trying to piece together Dane's evening. They talked to his friends, his family, and his coworker. They obviously started with Brandon because he was the last person to see Dane alive. He had told investigators they had gone to the House of Blues, then to the Hard Rock Hotel around 11 p.m. Him and Dane had gotten separated from the group and were hanging out doing tequila shots, having a fun time. And then around 1:30 a.m., Brandon was tired and decided he wanted to go back to his hotel where he was staying. He left Dane, and he didn't think that Dane was all that drunk. He was forming proper words, proper sentences. He wasn't falling down or losing his balance. He was very coherent when he left him. But investigators had talked to other people at the bar, and they actually contradicted what Brandon was saying about how drunk Dane was. But once detectives look into Brandon's alibi, aka the CCTV footage.
At the hotel where he's staying, probably.
Yeah.
And the Hard Rock.
Yeah.
Wherever.
They're able to see him on security cameras going from the Hard Rock Hotel to his hotel room.
Wow.
And he had not come out of there until the morning.
So maybe he was just as drunk as Dane and didn't realize.
Fine.
He's fine.
Exactly, right?
Oh, man.
So they are able to verify that
he has nothing to do with anything regarding to Dane.
Yeah, despite his unawareness of the drunken state of Dane.
Yeah.
And on top of them seeing Brandon, they were actually able to see Dane on security footage later on in the morning in the gas lamp district. He was with other friends and he looked very intoxicated, a little stumbly, but overall having a good time. They do not see anything suspicious whatsoever. But the last sighting of Dane on camera is around 3 a.m. on January 26th, and it shows him turning onto a street. And after that, the investigators have no idea where he went or what happened to him.
Was he by himself when he went down that street?
Yes.
Ugh.
And this is the only information that the detectives have to go on.
Right. They have a direction and know that he was by himself. So, there's a number of possibilities. Could be hammered, wasted, passed out somewhere. maybe, but like 30 hours after, probably not.
Yeah, a little questionable.
Or like something really bad has happened to him.
Well, Bev, 3 days later, and 6 miles from the gas lamp quarters in a place called City Heights, a dog walker is out with his dog around 7 a.m. in the morning, and they see what they assume is a homeless person wrapped in a blanket. They approach and try and see if they're okay, and when they get no response, they call 911. When the detectives arrive, the body is cold and has absolutely no heartbeat. Investigators first thought this was an odd area to find a dead body because there's not typically a lot of transients, and it was not easily accessible by foot. So that means that there's a really low chance of them finding a dead homeless person there. But either way, the cops call the medical examiner. When they arrive, they then unwrap the body from the blanket. And what they see is a young male who was cold to the touch, no heartbeat. And when they start examining how he was rolled up, they realize that this was not something he could have done himself. So he wasn't like cold and, just wrapped himself in a blanket and passed out and died or something.
Like he was physically
rolled up like a little burrito.
Right.
Yeah.
Which is even like it plays into the theory of the cops that this wasn't a homeless person just like trying to get warm, and that like maybe somebody placed this person, and that's why it looked so out of place.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. So they noted he was fully clothed and was wearing a beanie, a little toque, hat, whatever you want to call it. He was wearing one. What really stood out to the investigators was there was a ridiculous amount of animal hair on the blanket that he was wrapped in. They also noticed some very distinct tire tracks right near the body. Overall, the young man did not have any noticeable injuries to explain his death.
Interesting.
Right? So they are just as confused as anyone, so obviously they need to send him for an autopsy to figure shit out.
Yeah, like what is his manner of death? Was it an accident? And maybe someone just didn't want to get blamed.
You never know.
It murder?
You're always like, was it murder? Now, Bev, leading up to this discovery of the body, the investigators had heard about Dane, the missing man. And when they unrolled him from the blanket, they noticed he was wearing a Hurley shirt, which looked just like the description of the clothes that Dane was last seen in. At that point, they kind of figure out this must be this kid.
Yeah.
So the family was called and asked to come down and identify the body. Unfortunately, they were able to confirm that it was 23-year-old Dane Williams. After that, his body is sent for an autopsy, and the medical examiner said that Dane had been dead 1 to 3 days. So not very specific, but not a long period of time.
Which also kind of goes with the night he went missing and when he was found.
Exactly.
So
he noted that he had been sexually assaulted, but other than that, outwardly, there was still no injuries present to explain his death. So the examiner had to wait for a toxicology report to come back before he could label Dane's death.
So when did he receive the toxicology report? And what was in his bloodstream, Rebecca?
They got it back 2 months later, and it showed that Dane had diazepam and quinine in his system. These are essentially nervous system depressants. And this cocktail would ultimately lead him to go completely unconscious. On top of that, his blood alcohol level was 0.17.
Oh.
So when the drugs and the alcohol is mixed, it's even more
suppressant on his system.
Exactly.
Oh, man.
So they know he was drugged because most people are not taking those drugs while drinking.
Right. And at least they can assume specifically because he was raped as well.
Yes. So they are 100% suspecting foul play.
And he was wrapped in
a blanket.
Yeah. Oh my God.
So, Bev, with all this information, the investigators still have no clear direction to go in. They don't have witnesses. They don't have security footage.
Mm-hmm. But you know what they do have? And it could be a little something, or maybe nothing at all. But my little criminal mind is thinking dog hair. Number one, you could see what type of dog it comes from. Number two, you could also try and find the tire tracks and use those as a piece of evidence. So far, That's what I got.
That's what you got. Wow. You'd probably be a very good detective, Bevy.
Oh, thanks, Beck.
Oh, shucks.
Let me go tell the Calgary Police Force.
Hire me.
My sister says I'd be good.
I can investigate. Me investigate.
I can pick up on very obvious clues.
Right.
Oh, man.
Thanks, tips. Thanks.
Yeah. But like, those are pretty much two things I noticed that they could go off of at this point. So
Yeah, you're right.
they go
could.
off of those? Do they?
They definitely do, yeah.
Yeah.
Along with many other things, but
Ooh.
I'll tell you in just a moment.
Okay.
So at that point, they don't really have anything that matches, like I said. So they decide to canvass the area again. And they actually come across two women who had seen Dane in an alleyway around 3 a.m. They said he was completely intoxicated, was having trouble standing, and they were really concerned for him. But they did not want to call the police because they didn't want him to go to jail. So they asked him if he was okay, which he said he was fine, and they went on their way.
Oh, I feel like, it's just one of those moments that could have like saved his life.
I know.
Because it's also sad as you're describing just like how he is, like intoxicated, like stumbling across, like to a predator. That's like
very vulnerable.
Yeah, that person's very vulnerable. And like obviously somebody who was a predator saw this and like took advantage of it. And I mean, the worst case scenario happened, which is he's now dead in an alleyway or dead on the street. So it's just so sad.
I know.
He said, I'm fine. And like, it's also sad because, I think when you hear this story, you're like, every woman is kind of going, yeah, this is kind of our worst fear. Like, you're alone, drunk, someone takes an advantage. And this one kind of turns it on its head because it's a male. And it's just like, you feel for him because, he said he's fine. Maybe thinks like he can handle it all on his own.
Find his way back.
Yeah. But,
yeah.
It can happen to anyone, which is just so devastating.
It's scary, right?
Totally.
Well, the one interesting thing that the investigators picked up on, Bev, after talking to, or while talking to these girls, is when they saw him, he was not wearing a beanie.
Oh.
And all through the night on security footage, he wasn't either. So they now know that this beanie came from somewhere else.
Yeah, someone else. Oh, I hope it has like a brand on it, or like one of those work caps with the name of like where someone works.
I know what you're talking about, and it does not.
Damn.
But it has something even better.
DNA?
Yes. Yes, it
DNA?
tested positive for male DNA from semen.
From semen?
And it was not Dane's.
Ooh.
Unfortunately, when they entered that DNA into their database, there was absolutely no matches. So again, kind of a dead end.
Yeah, it's a great lead if you have someone else's DNA.
Yeah.
But if not, useless. However, I mean, like for the future to be able to test suspects' DNA off of, it's great.
It's fabulous.
But
we love DNA.
It's like, where do they go from here, right? They have all these like a decent lead, but like also not. So
yeah, like they can't get any further without something else that they don't know what they're looking for it yet.
Yeah, so like, what's the next piece of the puzzle that's going to bring this all together?
Exactly. Well, this is really frustrating everyone.
Right.
Right? Because they just want to know what happened.
Mm-hmm.
And the whole family is going through this absolute torment because they have people calling them with all these random leads, like people such as psychics, mediums, just with all this, half of it or most of it is bullshit information.
Yes.
However, one call sounded very promising, and it was a psychic that had actually worked with the police force before. They ended up telling Dane's mother that their suspect was of Asian descent or possibly Tongan. He was gay, drives a white van, and he also fishes out of the San Diego marina. With that information, Dane's family contacts the police department, and they themselves end up meeting up with the psychic who tells them the exact same thing. Now, back at the office, as detectives are talking about this, another unrelated detective actually overhears them and says, hey, I have this contact within the gas lamp district. He's a pretty violent guy, a little nutty, and he's Tongan. And he fishes. Could you imagine hearing that? Being like, what? Okay, they get his name. They need to talk to this guy.
Oh my God, they need his DNA.
Yeah, never mind talking to him.
Yeah.
Well, they find an address related to him and they knock on the door and a couple answers it. The police ask, do you know who this man is? And they show him a photo. They say, yes, we actually do. We were on vacation and he was house sitting for us. And then randomly, the detectives see a cat walk by.
The hair.
Yes, right? So their interest is piqued just like ours.
Mm-hmm.
And they also tell the detectives that we let him use our van. Now, although this was very intriguing and it sounded promising, when they actually looked into this man and the details, they realized this is not our guy. And God damn it, we're back to square one again.
No fucking way, Becky.
Yes, it was not a helpful lead, in fact.
I was literally like, wow, this is like perfect. The stars are aligning. We'll find our answers sooner than later. And you just cut me down to like a stump.
Back to square one.
Back to square one. Don't ask me where I get these sayings from. Like, it's like my brain
down
just
like a stump. Is that what you said? It just like clued in.
You cut me down like a stump.
God, I'm feeling so deforested right now.
Yeah. Good one, Becky. Good one. I loved it. You cut me down like a stump. You goddamn deforester.
Ruining the earth and my environment. Well, Bev, that is exactly where the investigation stayed for another year and a half. There was absolutely no leads, no suspects, but in August of 2009, there was a hit on the DNA.
Somebody got arrested.
Close.
What?
It matched another case in the Major Sex Crime Division.
No.
Yes.
A serial rapist.
It sounds like it, right?
Yeah.
Well, a Navy corpsman had actually been sexually assaulted. He had very high levels of benzodiazepines in his system. It was the exact same drug that Dane Williams had in his.
Yes, so serial rapist.
Yes.
Exact same MO.
Yep. So the corpsman had told investigators that he had bummed a cigarette off a man in the gas lamp district. And they ended up chatting for a while, and then they had a few drinks. And he said the guy seemed really cool. And then he was offered to be shown around San Diego. So the corpsman got in the man's car and they started driving. But as they drove around, the Navy corpsman actually ended up getting a really bad headache. And so his new friend stopped, got some alcohol for them, and gave him 2 pills. He told him it was for his headache. Assuming it was Tylenol or Advil,
He just took it.
he just downed them.
Wow, there is really something to say about like when you get friendly with somebody and they're like you get this certain level of comfort when like conversation flows easily. You know, someone does a favor for you, like giving you a cigarette or buying you alcohol.
Or
You like
headache
let your
medicine.
guard down.
100% you do.
Damn.
Unfortunately, not long after taking those pills, he started getting kind of fuzzy feeling and he blacked out. But when he woke up, he realized he was in a strange home. He had no idea where he was, and he noticed his underwear was missing.
Oh my God.
He was so freaked out, he managed to get out of the house and actually get on a bus. And then he called the police.
Wow, like what would have happened if he didn't wake up then and get away?
Yeah,
I hope he
or-
remembers where the house is.
He does not, Bev.
But I'm sure like he knows what bus he was on.
I'm sure he does. But fortunately, because of his quick thinking and calling the police right away, they were able to get evidence off of him, his clothes, and submit them to the lab. This was the DNA that hit on the Dane Williams case. Now, the victim told detectives that the man went by the name of Phil, and shockingly, he had a number in his phone of this man. So they got a search warrant for that number. However, Bev, they found it was not registered to anyone specifically.
Damn, it was like one of those throwaway phones.
It was a burner phone. You got it.
Damn. Well, obviously, if this guy is raping men serially,
Why would you use your own personal cell phone?
yeah, that's stupid. And
It
give
is
it
stupid.
out when
Yeah.
you know you're about to do something totally unethical and
Right?
immoral to somebody.
Yes.
Like, why would you do that?
No one would do that. So he's playing it smart, but
Also, can I just say one thing?
yes.
I'm like, I didn't even know you could get a search warrant on a phone number.
You didn't know that?
No, I didn't know that.
Oh, shit. Yes.
Is it just to get like the information of like where calls were placed and like the data?
Yep.
Wow. I think I did know that, but I just didn't realize that's like what it would be called, like a search warrant for the number.
Yeah, like you knew they needed permission?
Yeah, like obviously, but like didn't realize that it too is called a search warrant.
Yeah, Bev, the warrants are actually a pretty broad term. Like you can get warrants for DNA, someone's house, their vehicle, their hair,
their DNA,
their phone.
Wow,
emails.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I feel like I should have known that. I just always thought it was just like the property search, you know?
Yeah.
Cool.
There you go. You learned something new today.
Yeah, I did.
Fabulous.
Thank you, oh teacher wise one.
Ah, you're welcome.
Awesome. So,
I want to be just like you.
Wait a second.
What?
I don't condone this message. No, just kidding.
Yeah, she does.
do. I love you. I love you. You're amazing.
Thank you.
And everyone would be lucky to be just like you.
Thank you, Bevy.
You're welcome.
That was actually really nice. Oh.
You kind of like forced that on me, but you know.
You had the option to say something nasty and you took the high road.
It's true. It's true.
It doesn't always happen like that. So I'm like, oh my God.
Well, you got punched really hard in the head at boxing. So I thought you needed a little upper.
Cut. Just kidding. Didn't get one of those.
You're like, please no. I don't want to cry on my way home again.
Don't say that on the podcast, Bevy.
Why?
I called you crying and telling you I cried in confidence.
Well, too late.
Oh, so we're not taking that out.
No.
Fabulous.
No.
Okay, well, let's carry on.
Yes. Shall we?
Yes. So, because of the warrant, they were able to get a bunch of the numbers from that burner phone. So they got additional warrants so that they were able to call those numbers.
Ooh.
And when they did, they actually ended up speaking to a woman who said that the number of the burner phone belonged to her nephew, Philong Huynh.
Ooh, which matches the name.
Yes. And she also let them know that he goes by the name Phil. So that's where the Navy...
Yeah, so this is a fantastic lead.
Absolutely it is. Now, detectives start doing background check on this Phil character. And initially what they found was that he was Vietnamese. He was also born in 1970, and he had a pharmaceutical background.
Ooh, like, holy shit. Number one of my holy shit is that the psychic was right in terms of, like, his ethnicity.
Yes.
And then, holy shit, the link of him being, like, or having a background in pharmaceuticals, and then, like, the way that these people are getting blacked out or murdered is with drugs. So it's like, this looks very promising. Like, yes. Phil, you nasty bud.
And you're on our radar.
You're on our fucking radar. Whoop, whoop, whoop. That's my sonar. Whoop, for nasty. Whoop, whoop, whoop.
You should work on that.
It should be like, Phil, Phil.
Getting closer, getting hotter.
Yeah. Oh, God.
Well, Bev,
yes.
What's even more interesting is that Phil actually went to a medical school. And they obviously went and looked into him that way. And they noticed in his transcripts that he had taken several classes that would have given him the knowledge on how certain medications would interact with each other, as well as alcohol, and what the specific effects it would have on humans. Ultimately, he knew the benzodiazepines and alcohol would have made victims unable to move, as well as cause short-term memory loss.
Wow.
However, within his time in school, Phil had actually faced charges on 2 different sexual assault cases. Unfortunately, though, neither of them were actually prosecuted.
Do you know why? Like, was it that the witnesses didn't want to come forward, or maybe not enough evidence? Or, like, do you even know why they weren't prosecuted?
I am not sure at all.
Okay.
To be quite honest.
Yeah.
But the school took that very seriously, that he was even involved in that.
Did they kick him out?
Yeah, they did. Kicked him right out.
Damn straight. Holy shit. So, yeah, like, he has done this numerous times before. That is wild, though. Like, they do have short-term memory loss. Like, I think what is kind of floating around in my mind right now is, like, did he know enough of like how those drugs would interact with alcohol to the extent that they would kill a person, and that this was like an intentional killing, or if the amount of alcohol in someone's system would depend on the effect of the drugs and how they interacted with alcohol. So maybe he didn't know how much alcohol Dane had drank, and so therefore when he gave him the medication did not intend to actually kill him. Like, I'm just wondering if he's actually a murderer or like an intentional murderer, or like accidental, you know? Are we talking first degree, second degree, third degree, manslaughter? Anyways, that's floating around.
Okay,
I'm curious to know, but like,
you know what? I could only assume that if he knew how those drugs would have affected a human body.
yes. He's risking it anyways, right?
He must have known that involved or adding alcohol to that mix would have certain consequences or possible consequences.
Right. And Dane was clearly
intoxicated. And to also put that in another perspective, with the Navy corpsman, he actually bought him alcohol.
Oh,
to take the
I
drink,
forgot about that.
the pills down with, right?
So true.
So I think with that knowledge, if I was an officer, I would be looking at first degree, just knowing what he knew.
Yeah, no, that's totally fair. I really appreciate your opinion on that, because anytime you're like playing with fire that way with that amount of knowledge, like you have to know the potential outcome. And if you know the potential outcome and go forward with the action anyways, like you are culpable.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I mean, you take almost any drug, any pain med that we've ever been prescribed, like within our lives and certain situations, a lot of those drugs say don't take with alcohol.
Yep, totally.
That's like almost on every single one I've ever been prescribed in my life.
Yeah, because they're all like downers.
Exactly. So
bring your heart rate too low.
Exactly.
Then
don't drink on them.
Yeah.
You might die. So anyways, we'll get into those charges a bit further down the road, but those are very good points and questions you had.
Thanks.
Now, within that background check, so they're still in the background check, remember
right,
that?
Of course.
They get an address for Phil, and they realize that he lives with his mother. And that address is only 1.5 blocks away from where Dane's body was found.
Whoa, holy shit.
Yeah.
Holy crap. I was not expecting you to say that. I was truly thinking like it was directly on the bus that this like the Navy man like the Navy man
was traveling after
Do you know the Navy man? I'm sorry. All the kids,
Navy
man? The Navy man!
Jesus.
I'm sorry. It's just that. This morning,
What?
There's a kid in my class. They were having muffins and he was coloring, right? They get the option, like, you can either have your breakfast or you can color. Like, those are your two options. You're not going to run around the room opening up centers and, like, being wild while kids are trying to eat and we're trying to serve them.
This is a controlled environment.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So he starts off, like, not wanting breakfast.
Oh.
But then he decides to go eat some muffins. And then as me and the teacher are, like, looked away, all of a sudden we look back and the kid has grabbed 3 muffins from the thing. And I was like, and then like the teacher was like, oh, you think you're sneaky. And I was like, look at you, the muffin man.
You said that to him?
Well, I was like, oh, you're just a little muffin man. He's like, no. I'm like, oh, Spider-Man? And he's like, yeah. I'm like, looks like the muffin man. I'm like, what you eating there?
Muffins?
He's munching on the muffins. So anyways, when you said Navy man, I was like, yeah, a Navy man.
It was in the forefront of your brain.
It was right there.
It's quite the crossover you made there.
Mm-hmm.
Muffin man, Navy man.
My associations are weird and inappropriate.
That's okay.
So anyways, yeah, I thought that he was going to live by the bus stop. But
not with his mother.
Not near the body.
Right.
Or that close to the body of Dane. I thought you were going to be like, he was close to the bus stop, the bus route.
Right.
If that makes sense.
Yes.
Anyway, so holy shit, that is crazy.
Yes. And they actually realized that Phil had also contacted a rental car company, and one of them rented Phil a caravan just after Dane went missing, which happened to match the tire tracks found by his body, Bev.
Oh, shit.
Mm-hmm. And it means that psychic was also right about the type of vehicle
Right, because she said it was like a van.
Exactly. So at this point, detectives believe pretty strongly that Phil is their suspect. So they decide to put him under surveillance. They learn that he himself drives a black Infiniti, but his car is actually in the shop getting fixed. So that means it's going to be a little harder to have surveillance on him when they don't know what vehicle he's driving. And then it's hard to tell where he's going and coming from.
Right.
So they try to pull a little sneak attack. They call the repair shop and they get one of the employees to call Phil and let him know that his car is ready. Unfortunately, Bev, his mom shows up to pick up the car. Like, damn
off.
it, hey?
God damn, mom's doing too much.
Well, exactly, right? So obviously this puts a dent in their plan and they can't follow Phil. But they decide to follow his mom. And they follow her to a grocery store where she meets up with a man who gets out of a red Subaru. They go into the store. When they come out and drive away, they actually decide to pull over the red Subaru because they had a feeling this was Phil.
Right, meeting his mom at the grocery store.
And it was.
Holy crap.
So they got a little lucky there. When they ask him who he is, though, he completely denies that he's Phil.
What?
He's like, no, I'm not Phil. And they're like, okay, man, we got a picture of you from the DMV and you look exactly like him. For sure you're Phil.
So he's having some sketchy behavior.
Exactly. So they arrest him because they have enough evidence to arrest him because of the sexual assault charge on the Navy corpsman.
Exactly.
So he's brought back down to the station and processed.
So they get his DNA.
Yes, they do get it in the processing routine. This is an absolute relief for everyone because he's no longer on the streets able to hurt anyone else. However, it does take a bit of time for them to send off the DNA and find a potential match, right?
Of course.
So after this, they execute another search warrant. And Bev, this time it is for his home. And when they get to his house, they realize that it is virtually a hoarding scenario. There is things everywhere. They, in fact, find receipts dating back decades.
Whoa.
Yeah, just to like kind of put it in perspective of how much stuff they have.
Holy crap. They're going to have so much stuff to go through.
Oh yeah, what a task that would be, hey?
But also, like, how lucky is that in a way? Because it might take them a while to go through that, but surely if there's evidence to be found, they will find it.
Right? And with that much stuff piled up everywhere, how do you thoroughly get rid of any evidence or get rid of the evidence, right?
Exactly.
There's gonna, like you said, gonna be something.
Yeah, there's no way you can clean like every single surface or anything like that, right?
Yeah. And on top of that, they found so many bags of material. And Bev, they also found a mini pharmacy in the house. And
what?
Yes, it consisted of the whole benzodiazepine family, as well as Levitra, which is an erectile dysfunction drug.
Oh my God.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh, I had a lot of like bad thoughts when you said that. Just thinking of like who was using that and why.
Yeah, because he was doing bad things to people.
Yeah, but like, why would he need help with it? Maybe it was like how long he wanted to do it for. I don't know.
Not questions I have answers to, that's for sure.
Damn, that's just savage.
I know. Well, there was also a computer which had searches on the internet on how to purchase benzodiazepine drugs on the internet, as well as a chat room for people who were attempting to acquire benzodiazepine drugs.
Because obviously you need a prescription. So
prescription or to be a doctor.
That's so bad. That's like,
let me get my subscription on my benzodiazepine.
Classic 2000.
$29.99 a month.
Comment. It's just like no one ever would have fucking said that like in the 90s or even like the 80s, 70s.
No, that is
jeez, that was a
more
bad
recent
slip right there.
Jeez, Bub.
Oh fuck! I promise.
You're
I'm
too
just
modern.
not stupid.
Too modern for this story.
Yeah. So you need a prescription for drugs like that.
Exactly.
Obviously.
Yeah. So where to go? Online to get non-prescription benzodiazepines. Now, what's really creepy is they found a book called Military Trade. And what's creepy about it is that this book discusses how to have sex with straight heterosexual military men. So it was like a guide, I guess, on how to do it. Who would write a book like that? I don't know. Who would buy it?
Like, what the actual freaking fuck?
Creepy.
And, well, we know that in this tale of murder and rape, there was a Navy man.
Mm-hmm.
Don't say it, no. But yeah, is it to like overcome their brute strength and skill techniques of fighting?
I mean, I did not look the book up. I didn't care to. So I can
Fair
only...
enough. Don't want that on your search history.
Yeah, don't want that. So I can only imagine what it discusses, but I think it's creepy nonetheless, because why would anyone seek that out?
Yeah, that's just weird.
Now, Bev, they also found several CDs from a pornography store in San Diego. Phil had done some computer work for them, but when they went to talk to them, they actually found one of the actors from the pornography studio had told the investigators that Phil had taken him down to Tijuana and had sexually assaulted him.
Wait, what?
Yeah.
He had taken him to Tijuana, like
Mexico.
traveled with him.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Wow.
Yeah.
This guy does a lot to like gain people's trusts. Like,
He kind of befriends them at
befriends
times.
them totally. Like taking
Mhm.
someone on a trip, you'd be like, sweet, with my buddy, we're gonna have a great time.
Yeah.
JK. Holy shit.
Yeah.
So this guy just never came forward?
I guess not. Not until that moment. The even creepier thing is they actually found pill bottles in Phil's vehicle from Tijuana, which is interesting because that pornography actor said Phil took him to Tijuana as well.
Right.
So the coincidence, it's odd.
It's uncanny, especially because the porn star has no real knowledge of what the detectives are like inquiring about this Phil guy for. So he has no reason to like lie or make his story match evidence. Like he's got no skin in the game.
No, he doesn't. You're absolutely right. So it's such a weird coincidence that they also found that after hearing that story.
His testimony.
Right?
Exactly.
So, Bev, it gets a little crazier from here too, because they actually find a handwritten journal within the home with lists of men's names.
No.
Yeah, detectives consider it like a victim roster. It includes names, phone numbers, and other personal details that Phil may have gotten within their interactions. Now, Dane and the Navy corpsman, both their names were on that list.
Wow. You know what this reminds me of? And I know you haven't watched it, but in Vampire Diaries, Stefan Savitar? Like I just sounded like the biggest Valley girl.
You did.
He would like create a list of every victim's name that he vampired.
Oh, wow. Yeah, this is quite similar. I see how you made that correlation for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So when the detectives see that, they realize like, oh my gosh, how many other victims does Phil have? Needless to say, it's wicked creepy.
Yeah, it's out there for sure.
Well, Bev, I'm sure you've been waiting for this one the whole time. As they're executing the search warrant, they notice there was a dog in their home.
Oh, yes.
And they actually got some dog hairs and tested it and compared it to the hair on the blanket that Dane was wrapped in.
Mm-hmm.
They matched.
Of course they did. Wow.
Right. So they know that the blanket came from Phil's home.
Right. Yeah.
So here's just one more piece of the puzzle solidifying that Phil is guilty.
The murderer.
And
rapist, honestly. Like, he's not making good choices.
No, he's not, Bev. Well, now the detectives have the pet hair. They have the victim list. They have the tire treads from the rental car. They have the cell phones. And now, Bev, they have complete matching DNA between Dane's crime, the Navy corpsman, and now Phil. They all match, and they know that he is responsible for both of those crimes, and because of that victim list, probably many others.
Wow.
So they start thinking, okay, we got all the details, we're wrapping the case up, but they find a set of keys within that hoarded house.
Becky.
This set of keys brings them to a storage locker.
Oh my God.
Within that locker, they find bags and bags of men's clothing.
What?
And their underwear. They find toiletries and watches. One specifically being a Nixon watch that had belonged to Dane.
So like mementos.
Exactly. They think it is basically a storage locker of trophies.
Of course.
So after seeing all that, having all that evidence, on September 10th, 2009, Philong was charged with sodomy of a Navy corpsman and first-degree murder and sodomy for Dane Williams. Phil's trial lasted about 5 weeks, where he was forced to encounter several of his male victims. And ultimately, Philong was found guilty of all charges: murder with special circumstances and sexual assault of Dane Williams, and sexual assault of Navy corpsman. He was sentenced to life in prison without parole. Detectives and all the families of Philong's victims believe that he was a serial rapist, and if they had not caught him when they did, he would have turned into a serial killer. And they believed on the night of January 26, 2008, that Phil was out hunting in the gas lamp district for a victim, and unfortunately ran into Dane Williams. He took advantage of his kind and friendly demeanor and ended his life. Detectives are grateful for all the people that came forward, especially the Navy corpsman, because without him, there could be many more victims. Well, Bev, that's all I got for you. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for sharing.